This is Petey Williams, the Canadian Destroyer, and you're in the Wrestling Epicenter.
You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio, featuring the interactive interview, courtesy of WrestlingEpicenter.com. What a weekend it was, everybody. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Interactive Wrestling Radio right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com. My name is James Walsh, and of course, I speak of WrestleMania weekend. From the huge success that was Impact Wrestling versus Lucha Underground, to Super Card of Honor, to House of Hardcore, to WrestleMania itself and the Hall of Fame, there was so much good stuff for wrestling fans and wrestling promotions. Just can't say enough about how great this was for professional wrestling. So, hope you guys enjoyed the event that we helped promote last week. The two events we helped promote last week, in fact, as Impact Wrestling took on Lucha Underground on Twitch. What a heck of a show that was. Match of the night, I got to give it to him. Jeremiah Crane, Sami Callihan versus Eddie Edwards. Eddie Edwards had almost a Bret Hart quality to him in that match. That was just such a good match. Great finish. Well-told story, and if you're listening, Impact Wrestling, maybe think about bringing Matt Striker on as the left-hand man to Josh Matthews, because they had a great chemistry together. I know they've worked together before, but still, that was really good. Nothing against Sanjay Dutt, just saying. They were enjoyable to listen to together, kind of brought out the best of one another. Of course, WrestleMania Day, though, did start on a bad note. In fact, WrestleMania Week started on a bad note. Two bad notes to bring up, and I wanted to mention it because they're two former guests of our show. Unfortunately, the wonderful WWE superstar, Hall of Famer, Luscious Johnny Valiant passed away. He got hit by a car leading into WrestleMania Week. And then on WrestleMania Day itself, we found out that a guy who more recently was on our show, the former GWF Light Heavyweight Champion, former member of Beauty and the Beast, Terry Garvin Sims, passed away. And we don't know the circumstances regarding his passing, but I can tell you that that one was a tough pill to swallow. One of his friends, a fellow wrestler from the Texas area, was surfing YouTube, came across our interview, and paid us a compliment, called our interview with Terry Garvin Sims a timepiece, because we helped tell his story, and it's out there now forever. That, to a degree, is why we do what we do here at the Wrestling Epicenter. That's why I interview who we interview. Of course, it's awesome to have our guest this week, Petey Williams and Austin Aries, on the teleconference call. Those are always great things to have, and it's always great to have on Hulk Hogan for a short interview, or Johnny Impact, or you name names here that we've had on. There's just so many of them. Ric Flair, Sting. But those are all stories that are going to be told through history. Whereas Terry Garvin maybe didn't have as much exposure, therefore his story wouldn't be told. And our interview will live on forever. His friends have already found it and listened to it. It was just a few years ago that we did it. If you haven't listened to it, check it out. It actually inspired him to do his own podcast for a short time called World Domination with Terry Garvin Sims. Man, it's going to suck knowing that I'm not there to bust his chops about Kentucky sports anymore. So our thoughts and prayers to the families of Johnny Valiant and Terry Garvin Sims. But on a brighter note, we got some stuff coming up. April 22nd. Impact Wrestling presents Redemption on pay-per-view. Every Thursday night we have Impact Wrestling on Pop TV. And this week, a guy who's going on to Redemption to challenge for the X Division Championship once again is the Canadian Destroyer, Petey Williams, joining us for the second time. He is our guest this week. Enjoyed a good 17 minutes with the Canadian Destroyer himself and got some good stuff out of him. I think it was a lot of fun. Hope you guys enjoy it. Thanks for tuning in. Listen to me babble for a few minutes here. And stay tuned for more from Interactive Wrestling Radio right after this.
Hi, this is Don Callis, and you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
Science! Our son Nicholas is involved in robotics. His team, Queen Creek's Dog Squad, has qualified for the World Championships in FIRST Robotics FRC in Houston, Texas. Next week. They can't get there on their own. They need help from those who are interested in the sport, in the craft. If you are interested in donating to a young team that has won the Rookie All-Star Awards for the right attitude and the right approach to robotics, please check out the link that's found on the Petey Williams interview page.
Welcome to Queen Creek Robotics.
Your donations will help us get to FIRST Championships in Houston next week.
Your donations will help cover travel, lodging, and meals.
Please give and share.
With Facebook, text, and Twitter.
Thank you so much for helping us.
Hey, this is AJ Styles, and you're listening to Interactive Interview.
Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio, right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com. On the Newsmaker with us, lying with us right now for the second time, is the Canadian Destroyer, Petey Williams. Mr. Williams, how are you doing today?
Oh, how's she going, eh? I'm doing good, thanks.
You know, I just can't tell that you're Canadian. It's just so hard to tell.
Well, when I say how's she going, I mean that's super Canadian. I mean I do that as a stereotype to all Canadians.
I know. I'm just joking.
Yeah,
So
no.
a lot's changed since we last spoke. We last talked just before Bound for Glory. Actually, really not that much has changed. Just a few extra tweaks have happened, and the addition of Don Callis to your good friend Scott D'Amore in charge of Impact Wrestling. Thoughts on the changes of Impact Wrestling since we last spoke back in October?
I think they've been changing for the better. I mean, a lot of people have noticed that like guys have asked for their release and left and stuff like that, but that's okay because you never want to. If I was a business owner or something like that, and somebody said, "Hey, I don't want to work here anymore. Give me my release," and I was like, "No, you're locked into my contract, and you're going to be miserable here, but we're going to, suck the money out of you." And all. No. If you don't want to be or work for my company, if this were my company, this is how I would say it, then don't be here. We want people to work for us that want to be here and want to improve the company, and I think that boosts morale in the locker room and stuff like that. So I think it's changing for the better. And Don Callis, he's great. I first met Don back when I first started, like with Scott D'Amore, like almost 18 years ago. And I never really actually worked with him, like underneath him or anything like that. And I just remember at the last set of tapings, he, I had a promo to do, and Impact's really good at your promos. They'll say, "Yep, here's your title match. You got a minute and a half. Go." And you can say pretty much whatever you want. And so I did my promo and stuff like that. And then Don says, "Hey, you started at like a 9 and brought it up to a 10, so it was kind of like too much. Why don't you start it at like a 2 and then bring it up slowly?" And I'm like, "All right." And I did it in the second take, and he was like, "That was great. That was golden." And I didn't feel it was good, but he thought it was good. And then other people thought it was great when they watched it. And I was like, wow, thanks. That's awesome. So Don's there to make the product better too. So I think it's all changing for the better, and we're on an upswing.
Absolutely. And Don's been there before. A lot of people don't remember, but he was there before in another role, and he's actually the guy, I remember the video package vividly, who introduced Ultimate X for the first time ever. So he's got a lot of lineage with Impact Wrestling. Yeah,
he was like a 2003-ish type person. I didn't start working with him 2004. Yeah. And I was there for the Wednesday pay-per-views, the last half of it, like the last 6 months or whatever. But yeah, no, Don Callis has been everywhere, and he's been everywhere twice.
Absolutely. So one of the cool things that you've had happen to you since we last spoke was you challenged for the World Heavyweight Championship on an Impact against Eli Drake. I thought that was a great match. I think the fans were pulling for you. They wanted to see you pull away with the World Heavyweight Championship. How did you enjoy challenging for the world title?
It was great. Like, I mean, everything, all the stars lined up that night. We were in Ottawa, so we were in my home country. It was, pretty much, I challenged the night after our Bound for Glory. And it's like, the Canadian hero, if you want to call it that, against the loudmouth, heel or whatever you want to call it. And, I've never had that opportunity before where to challenge one-on-one for the heavyweight title. So all the stars were lining up. I'm like, if I win this tonight, that's going to be great. My home country, first time I challenge. Yeah, I mean, and I really, really enjoyed the match. Eli Drake was phenomenal to work with. He's a true professional. And just watching him, I like, even with his promos and stuff, he's got this cool factor about him that a lot of people don't have in professional wrestling right now. They may try to, but maybe they don't portray it well. He does a good job portraying it. So he's a stud. Yeah, he's a cool guy.
Excellent. And, we mentioned Canada a few times here, and I kind of always wanted to get your take on this. I remember a guy who's going to be appearing at Redemption said in an ECW promo, when did we, being the U.S., go to war with Canada anyway? Why is there such heat? And Team Canada, when you guys first debuted, you guys were inherent bad guys just because you were from Canada. Do you blame leftovers from the Hart Foundation for that? Do you blame the South Park movie? What do you kind of attribute to the anti-Canadian sentiment among wrestling fans?
Oh, it goes back well before that. Like, just going back to Americans being very patriotic, anybody that wasn't American, and this is going back probably like 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s, whatever, all our grandparents and stuff like that. If you weren't American, like think about the cars that we used to drive. Like if you weren't driving an American car, you were shunned pretty much. And now like you see all these like Japanese cars, Canadian, all types of cars, whatever the best deal is. So we're not like that anymore. But we still inherited that, stereotypical perception, I guess you could say, from just a lineage of our heritage pretty much. So it just kind of trickled on. And so that, like nowadays, I really don't think Americans, we're so politically correct now, to boo somebody that's from a different country is kind of like, I don't know if I should do that because, nowadays it's not okay to do that. So, but whatever. I mean, in 2004, it was still okay. And I think it's just, it's from the Harts all the way back from probably the Mountie back before that, all the way back from just our grandparents pretty much.
Very cool. That's a cool perspective. I always kind of wondered that. It was kind of weird to me as a wrestling fan. It's like, okay, Bret Hart's from Canada, and at first he was a babyface. Nobody really thought about that. And then all of a sudden it was like the biggest thing in the world. So who cares? I don't know. All right. So at Redemption, we mentioned the pay-per-view. You're going to be challenging Matt Sydal for the X Division Championship, cashing in your Feast or Fired briefcase. Thoughts on your match with Matt Sydal and possibly becoming the X Division champion? Again.
Well, third time. Well, first off, if I become X Division champion again, that'll be another benchmark for me because that'll be the first time in Impact history where there's been a full decade between title reigns when it comes to the X Division. So that'd be awesome. Like I haven't held the belt in 10 years. So that would be a feat that and that'd be for the record books and stuff like that. But as for Matt Sydal, I mean, I remember the very first time I wrestled Matt Sydal in 2003, 15 years ago. And that was the very first time that I pulled out the Canadian Destroyer. Matt Sydal was the first one to ever take the Canadian Destroyer. So I'm looking for, we were two young guys back then, and now we're not old, but we're 15 years older. So I'm looking to tear it up with him again at Redemption. And, whatever the outcome is, I know I'm going to enjoy the match. It'd be great if I could earn and win that X Division title again. And, it would feel special because I'm in such a different type of time in my life where I'm not like a young kid anymore and stuff like that. Now I'm thinking like smarter rather than harder and all that kind of stuff. So, I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope the fans are looking forward to it too.
As a fan, I am looking forward to it. It should be a great match. And we mentioned Eli Drake. earlier on, and he's going to be teaming with a guy you're very familiar with, Scott Steiner. You probably already know where I'm going with this, but what are the odds that you're going to walk away with the X Division Championship at the pay-per-view?
What are the odds?
Yeah,
Probably
here percentages maybe.
66 chance, which is great. That promo was great. I mean, he's adding fractions with percentage. Percentage. I don't know the plural of percentages, but he was adding percentage with fractions when pretty much a percentage is already a fraction. It was really weird. Like, he didn't say 66.6. He said 66 2/3%. I'm like, wow, I've never even heard it like that before. So that's pretty great. But yeah, I would say I have about a 66 2/3% chance of becoming the X Division champion again.
I went back and watched it after your conference call where you said that you looked into the camera and you were like, are we still filming this? And it's even funnier when you know what you were thinking watching it. So that's
that was one take that just kept on rolling. And when he started going on, I'm like, are we really? I looked in the camera. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess nobody's calling cut. We're still filming. Okay, let's see what happens. So it's if they said cut and they made us do it again, it wouldn't have came out the same way that it came out. I mean, that was one take, and that's just probably the best comedic, and I don't think he meant it to be comedic, but that was the best comedic interview, I think, in Impact history.
Absolutely, I would agree, and it's all the more reason to get a plug in for the Global Wrestling Network. So got to get that to check out that promo. All right, so a couple more questions. We'll let you go. I know you're having a big media day today. Austin Aries recently said on one of the conference calls, since we mentioned conference calls, that the X Division needs to be redefined. And he said that because when it started, everybody wasn't working like they are now, and that most wrestlers now are working in the style of the X Division, or what would have been considered the X Division. Thought that was an interesting, intriguing comment. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, he did present the problem, but what's the solution, right? I mean, when the X Division first started, it was the X Division. And now you look at every single wrestling company, whether you're a heavyweight, cruiserweight, whatever, that's the style now. I mean, what's the next for Evolution? We just go out there and just perform like a stunt show gymnastics type thing? I mean, that's not professional wrestling. So, I mean, yeah, he presented the problem, but, you know, the better thing would be like, okay, let's present a solution. What can it do to redefine itself? I don't have the answer for that. If I had the answer, then I'd be pitching that and I'd be trying to make that happen. The thing is, what's great about the X Division is people know where it started. You know, I mean, I do the Canadian Destroyer still, and it's been 15 years, and people still love to watch me do it. But you go to, when I was retired for 3 years, you went to any independent show, and it was almost in every single match. It was the most overdone move in all of wrestling. So, but still, something about the original always makes it special. So looking back at that, the original X Division, like, you know, that's where it came from. And so I think that's why it'll always be special, whether it's redefined or not.
Absolutely. And you actually mentioned Sami Callihan. This was before he had debuted with Impact Wrestling. You mentioned that you guys had talked at a convention before, and he told you that guys on his show, all of them were doing the Canadian Destroyer. Got to mention the baseball bat incident with Eddie Edwards that Sami Callihan had, where the internet kind of lost their mind collectively. I really don't understand why, because stuff happens, but what is your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, the internet lost its mind because he said he wasn't sorry for what he did and stuff like that. I mean, I talk about this in detail in one of my podcasts, and, you know, it's good. I think it's good for business. I'll just say that I think it's very good for business that he said he's not sorry, because guess what? The next week, what happens? More viewers tuned in, you know, because they wanted to see Sami probably get his butt kicked by Eddie. And they're going to keep tuning in, and they're going to, you know, if they have the match at Redemption, you know, people are going to watch it. It's going to be a grudge match. This is what a real grudge match is. You look back in the 80s when there was, or even before that, when there was real grudge matches, people wanted to tune in. It's great what Sami's doing. I love it. As a heel character, I love that he's saying that he's not sorry.
I do too. That's awesome. Final two questions for you. One of them's kind of a softball, but I wanted to ask you, as a male perspective who's been around Impact since the beginning, you saw the Trinities, the Tracy Brooks, all the Goldilocks, all the women that were part of it back then. all the way through Raka Khan, and now you get the women's division that you have now, the knockouts. Thoughts on the evolution of women's wrestling and Impact Wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, it's great to be a woman wrestler right now. I'll tell you that. You have, man, I mean, you probably have your pick of where you want to work, to tell you the truth. I mean, women's wrestling is growing. That's like the big boom right now. You know, maybe you look back like maybe 10 years, maybe it was cruiserweight guys, right? You know, like the X Division, you look at guys like AJ Styles, stuff like that, who are in the X Division, where they're at now. I think this is the boom. You know what I mean? You're going to see this going on. And I don't know what the next trend is going to be, but right now the trend is women's wrestling. And I'm proud of all of them. I mean, it's great that they're finally not just being pranced around in, you know, bra and panties and stuff like that. They're actually, hey, we're giving you the stage to have a competitive match. Go out there and show us you can do it. And they've been delivering. So, yeah, it's good.
Excellent. And final question for you, then I'll let you get on to probably your next interview, is thoughts on the future here of Impact Wrestling going forward and yourself involved in Impact Wrestling going forward.
I think they're on an upswing for sure. If you just look at this last weekend where you had Lucha Underground versus Impact Wrestling, I mean, it's like we're teaming up with other promotions now rather than trying to fight them. It's like the the wrestling community is coming together and just trying to, everybody wins. You know, it's not like before where you had the Monday Night War. It's like you're either watching Nitro or you're watching Raw. That's it. There's only room for one. There's so much content out there right now. There's room for wrestling fans to watch everything if they want to watch it. So, you know, I really enjoy it. And like I said before, like, people are working at Impact Wrestling because they want to work at Impact Wrestling. They're not people that ask for their releases. They get their release and they could go elsewhere. But the evolution of it, I mean, I think it's just still growing numbers and stuff like that. Maybe doing more cross promotion stuff like Lucha Underground and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, I know our TV schedule is going to be changing soon. Instead of filming like 3 months worth of TV in a week, we're going to do like, you know, a month's worth of TV in 2 days. So we're going to, you know, travel a little bit more and all that kind of stuff. So it's growing. And I'm really excited for it. And as for me, I mean, who knows? I didn't know I'd be back for this long. It's already April, and I thought I was going to be back from August until maybe November or something like that. So I'm just enjoying it. And when I stop enjoying it, I mean, that's when I'm gone. But I'm just, my first time around, I wasn't like stopping and like just soaking it all in. And now I am, and I'm just enjoying being in the moment. And now I'm almost wrestling, before I was wrestling as a competitor, working my way up. Now I'm almost wrestling as a fan. I'm like, yeah, I like doing this, and I don't want it to go away.
I agree. I've been a fan of this company since the Wednesday night pay-per-views. Obviously, you've worked there since the Wednesday night pay-per-views off and on. So certainly do appreciate and love what's going on with Impact Wrestling, and hopefully the upswing continues. All right, Petey, before I let you go, just wanted to say thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a great day, and thanks again for doing this with us again one more time.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to check out my podcast, it's the WrestlingPerspectivePodcast.com, and it's called the Wrestling Perspective Podcast, and I do it with myself and Dennis Farrell. He worked for ESPN doing their fantasy football podcast, but we do it, and we're not really interview heavy, but we're you know, we shoot the breeze about wrestling, all things and stuff like that. So give it it's a little bit different. So, you know, check it out and, you know, let us know what you think about it.
Well, I'll tell you what, nobody knows who I am. They all know who you are. You don't need an interview to draw people in, so that works. This is the Wrestling Epicenter. For over 15 years, we've brought you the top names in professional wrestling for exclusive interviews. Everybody you see here has been interviewed by our site. But we're more than just interviews. So be sure and check out WrestlingEpicenter.com for news, results, information, and of course our store. WrestlingEpicenter.com, your number one source for wrestling information.